So a lot of us have favorite books. I use plural because a lot of times it's hard to just choose one. There are multiple categories of things, right? And I have to admit, sci-fi is not usually my thing. But I do love a book that is probably a crowd favorite to a few folks that are part of that cult classic, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Anybody know that one? A few? Oh, wow, we need a cultural education here. Here we go. We've got some learning to do. And, this book is really kind of a tongue-in-cheek, humorous offering too, as the people were on a quest to find the answer to life, the universe, and absolutely everything that was, in fact, simple. At least so they thought. So they approached this big, if you can imagine it, supercomputer. Think like 1970s mainframe, only bigger and weirder, right? And they go and ask the supercomputer to give them the answer. And they have to wait, I don't know how many years. It's been a while since I've read it. Eons, let's say. And they come finally back in all the pomp and circumstance to receive the answer that will be given. And it is what? 42, yes. Now, what? Right? There is this sense where the answer comes and it's like, this is what we've been waiting for? Obviously, the answer is just supposed to be kind of a funny thing, a throwaway, because it's really not as much about the answer, but first the question that is important. It is the question that is often hard to define or even name, and so they were sent back again to the very beginning. But as we hold this question of the meaning of life or what our purpose is as human beings, there is a sense where the answer that we wait for is kind of this variable question mark that doesn't come from somewhere outside or some weird robotic entity. It comes from instead within. In life, you and I are the end answer. You and I are the people who give our respective lives meaning. So the challenge here isn't coming up with the meaning of life. It's coming up with what our question is to live. What question is your life working on, whether you're aware of that particular question or not? This question of meaning is a timeless one that's been dealt with in as many cultures and generations as we can imagine or name. Magrey De'Vega, who wrote the chapter that we're dealing with this week on raising awareness, he talked about a book that I haven't read yet, but it's on my list, by William MacAskill, and it's called What We Owe the Future. And he says that every culture on earth thinks about the future as in fact being in front of us. We do as well, don't we? And the past as being behind us, already done and finished. Every culture, that is, except one. The Amaya culture, a tribe that comes out of Bolivia and Peru, they think about the future as actually behind them and the past as in front of them, if you can imagine it. When they think about the past, they point ahead. And when they think about the possibility of the future, they point their thumbs behind. And how in the world can this make sense to them, do you say? Because they recognize the past as the absolute only thing that they can see and conceive and sometimes even understand with relative clarity. That's, of course, not the case with the future. It's still yet to be. We don't have eyes in the back of our heads, Magrey says. We can't see the future clearly. And in a way, he would say that we, whether we know it or not, are always walking in a way backwards toward and into the future. This is all to say that when it comes to being stuck in the past or trying to predict the future, the best way to live, perhaps the only way for us to live, is to focus on the very present moment in which we stand, live, and breathe. It is the only way we can know for sure where we are. When it comes to hearing God's voice and discovering God's purposes for us, an enterprise that is sometimes too big to even feel like we can step into that reality, we only need to worry about the next faithful step in front of us, or even sometimes just standing still. Hearing God's voice, the first step is to focus on the here and the now. Some of you may have wondered in hearing Emma read the text from Proverbs for us why this one is particularly given whenever we're talking about purpose and meaning in life. It feels like it's kind of on its other plane. But I think Proverbs, being wisdom literature like Job and Ecclesiastes and Psalms and Song of Solomon are, these are books that in fact don't focus on the past like Kings and Chronicles did, going over the whole history of monarchies and the rise and fall of the people of God and human beings around them. Nor do they focus on the future, even with prophets that came after them, many of them having encounters with God to be able to hear God's voice and speak to the people with authority. They don't focus on the past or the future, but the exquisite present. Proverbs, particularly in those freeze-dried parables that you can see, tiny stories and tiny statements about what it means to be alive and to be God's while we are alive. It calls us to pay attention, to raise awareness to our outer and inward reality, and they ultimately even call our name to a new way of living. Remember the words that maybe you even had inscribed on your grandmother's wall or on a pincushion, or maybe words that were scribbled in a youth Bible, or ones that are written on your heart. Trust in the Lord with all of your heart, and lean not into your own understanding. In all of your ways acknowledge God, and God will direct your paths. It's a beautiful thought, and one that when we find ourselves in the hurry of life and in the swirl of that which does not make sense in our lives, it is an anchor to cling to and rely on, even when it may not sometimes feel, if we're honest, quite true. Sometimes we can only find ourselves in the midst of the storms of life when we can get outside of ourselves. As the proverb says, get outside of our own understanding. Find ourselves by actually getting out to live the question our life may be asking of us, if we can slow down just for a minute to even figure out what that question might be. Our spiritual gifts are God's gifts given to us. Lisa preached for us last week, and one of the quotes that she offered, I'm trying to remember the author, it's not coming to me now, but the sentiment of it has stayed with me over this week. This sense that our gifts that we hold and are given to us are God's gifts to the world, poured out from our lives, from our mouths, from our actions, the way that we spend our time. They are a pure blessing poured out to the world like a balm, or like a precious gift we didn't know we needed at times. I hope some of you took the spiritual gifts assessment last week. If you didn't get a chance to, it's still a little code in the bulletin where you can even take it while I'm speaking right now. I'd love for you to engage with that and just see what comes up. And Lisa shared her gifts. I'll share mine. Maybe other preachers will share theirs. But the gifts that came up in the many times that I've taken this test, most of them are the same. A couple shift and change over the course of time. But the ones that came up were wisdom and teaching, apostleship, this sense where everywhere we go and every person we meet is one that belongs to us and we want to learn more about. Exhortation of supporting others and deep faith. What do we do with the gifts that I found, the gifts that you perhaps have found? What do we do with them? How do we commute those gifts and maybe even that awareness raised to a way to find deeper meaning and purpose than perhaps we already have in life? One of the things that I've leaned onto over the years is kind of a very, you would think it'd be kind of complex, but it's not that bad. It's a Venn diagram with 4 different circles. You know how sometimes you see 2 circles overlapped in each other, and they talk about an integrated connection between 2 things. Well, you have a card in your bulletin, if you didn't notice it earlier, that shows a diagram that is really reflective of, and a lot of people have claimed this, but the first time I encountered it, it was claimed to be a Japanese concept called ikigai. And it combines the words in Japanese, iki meaning to live, and gai meaning reason. So to translate it, it would be reason for living, purpose, meaning for life. It's a philosophy that encourages people to find what's important to them and live a life full of purpose and of joy. Something that deep down I think every human being wants. There are a few books written about it, but there was one by Mark Wynn that illustrated this concept in a way that really resonated and kind of challenged me a little bit at times. If you look at it, you see these 4 different modes of awareness in human beings and ways of operating in the world or seeing your world. What you love, passion, activities that bring you joy, fulfillment, and purpose. What you're good at, what Mark would call it as mastery, skills and talents that you excel in the world. What the world needs, meaning, making a positive contribution to the world and to others. And then, frankly, what you can be paid for, income or your occupation, activities or skills that are valuable economically and can allow you to make a living. Maybe you see all of these active in your life. You're running on all cylinders. Linda, thanks for laughing because you know that that's not true for all of us. Maybe, like me, you often, if not always, find at least one aspect that is really on the struggle bus, maybe. Or maybe the piece that has been too hard to deal with because it's asked you to make a change in your life that you're not ready to make. I know for me, one of the ones that is constantly shimmering and kind of calling at my name is that one in the top left corner called play. There's and maybe it's being a parent of younger kids and working a full-time job and all of that, but play is the thing that is constantly saying, I'm lonely, please pay attention to me. And when I lean into it, every time I feel like a more whole human being and like I've discovered a part of myself that I'd forgotten or suppressed because it wasn't convenient for the time. Maybe there's another part of this that for you feels the very same way, and it might be the very thing that's saying, come, look harder even right now. I know one of my friends, Ryan, when he looked at this, he said, when I asked people what questions actually emerge from this, he said, I see all of these kind of active in my life, but I've never seen them or seldom experienced them overlapping in such a rich and meaningful way where I experience meaning with my job or passion with another part. It seems like they're all compartmentalized, and I have to leave one to arrive in another. Friends, when we find ourselves living a whole life, a lot of these compartmentalized fragments are able to find some level of harmony and togetherness in the world. Maybe that's what we're striving for a little bit, just finding an awareness of our disconnection, not only between each other, but disconnection inside, between the parts of ourselves, and to find some way that we can be put back together, remembered, and made whole again. These empty places where the gaps or the blanks in one circle, as you see on the other side of your card, it can keep us from connecting to another to round out the whole of being human. When Lauren talked about serve earlier in our worship service today, it was about the church, right? You could hear aspects of it that would help in our life together and expand our witness, but it really is first and even more about you. It's about being a platform to help you find that whole and deepened and expanded life, being a platform to help you fulfill your purpose in this world in a whole and full way. It's being the present, attentive, and active ones in one area of our lives helps to connect us to others and round out our whole life experience as we watch others maybe excel in the places that we lack. That is the gift in the Christian community that we hold together. So life is indeed both question and answer, but it is living the question that comes first and foremost to help us find the meaning we seek on the journey. This living question: you are the source and the end user. Hearing God's voice, the first way, the first step is to focus on nothing other than the here and now. So now, what faithful step might God be calling you to take today? In the name of God, who was and is to come. Amen.